One of the strengths that God has given me is the ability to remember certain things. Growing up, my parents were constantly amazed that I was able to recall things that even they couldn't remember. Anytime they would try to think of something that was going on, they would ask me to rattle off a person's name or a place or a thing, and generally I could do it fairly effortlessly. And since I've been given a pretty good memory, oftentimes when I have appointments, I won't write them down because I just know I will remember them. Well, just recently, I received a text message one evening that said, "Are you ready?" And guess what? I had completely forgotten. I had completely spaced it out. Why? Well, because I didn't write it down. Now, while this specific example, it was not a huge deal at all, I think it does point to often a bigger theme in our lives. We often sin in the areas of our strengths. And let me explain what I mean as we continue our study in 1 Corinthians 2. I'm going to read verse 4. And here's how it reads. My message and my preaching were not with wise and persuasive words, but with a demonstration of the Spirit's power, so that your faith might not rest on human wisdom, but on God's power. Now remember, these first couple chapters, Paul has mentioned the word wisdom on numerous occasions, and he has mentioned the word spirit on numerous occasions. Right? Paul feels the need to repeatedly contrast the human form of wisdom with a wisdom that is generated by the Spirit. Now, perhaps if we go back to chapter 1, we will see why. I'm going to read verses 4 and 5, and I think this is very telling. He says, I always thank my God for you because of his grace given you in Christ Jesus. For in him you have been enriched in every way, with all kinds of speech and with all knowledge. Now, the church of Corinth excelled with gifts of speech and knowledge. But guess what? These strengths of theirs were simultaneously becoming the source of their sin. Right? They had become so enamored with false teachers who had refined oratory skills that they began to look down on Paul. Now, the nature of their gifts had become the means by which they depended upon themselves and the wisdom of this world, rather than on the type of wisdom that is generated from being a place when someone is at the end of themselves, like Paul found himself when he came to Corinth. So let's turn to Paul to see what true wisdom is. He says, my message and my preaching were not with wise and persuasive words, but with a demonstration of the Spirit's power. Right? Paul knew that if their dependence upon him was based on how much he knew and how much he could impress them, man, he knew that that would strip them of depending and relying upon God and would do them no good. Right? He knew he was insufficient for people to rely on. And so let us imitate this humility of Paul. And so let me leave you with a couple questions to ponder. What areas of strengths in your life have simultaneously become the source of sin because it has facilitated a dependence upon self rather than a dependence upon God?